All right, here we go. Round 3. So let's see how the guys did out there. Kind of go through this. I was watching these matches. I think I was 50-50. So, whatever. But let me kind of check on my setup here. Let me see here. So that one. Yeah, these glasses, these glasses make me look fat. Yeah. See, I'm trying to be funny. Maybe it'll work. I got to add some sound effects. Anyways, all right. Enough of Tommy Boy. Here we go. All right, so let's go in here. Let's see how the boys did here. So at EJ, take down Keiko and Roberts, EJ and Kent. And then we had the lefties. I think that's a lefty-righty team, that Keplinger Davidson. Yeah, I kind of figured this would be an easy call. This one surprised me. I really don't know, how good the brothers are, Lavery Spar, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Probably not. Maybe it's Spa or something like that. But anyways, I was surprised. I mean, definitely Mitch and Packy, they didn't lay down. Not at all. You look at these scores, and they did not lay down at all. This probably last game here was probably just 20 pin, whatever, 22 or 26 pin difference there. Probably just didn't really care. It was over, in the ninth or 10th frame, and that's why it was such a big difference. But you can see their scores. These guys didn't lay down. Watched a little bit of their round 2. Someone posted it on YouTube, and I was watching a little bit of it. Looked like Mitch was throwing urethane up around the track somewhere. It looked like he had a pretty good line. It looked like Packy really had to kind of figure out what was going on. He was probably on a fresh, and he was the only lefty, and he was probably on the fresh, and he probably really had to figure it out. So I'd be curious to kind of see when their video comes out, kind of see how they, see how they were playing them, and kind of see what the challenges were. Obviously 240 game. They had 3 240 games, 237. So that they had them figured out. Maybe it was carry. I could see the urethane kind of burning up a little soon. With the brothers both being right-handed. Maybe Mitch had some trouble with carry. But anyways, going to the next. This one, even though it went down to the wire, I was really confident that Nate and Julian would survive in this. It was close because they started off with the first 3 wins, and then Ogle and Rash, they came back 250, 220, 250. That's pretty strong. And then whatever happened in that last game. But I was happy to see these guys make it through. This one didn't really surprise me too much. I think this is a kind of a surprise strong team here, at least for me. Maybe some people that are more involved in the tour or watching these guys bowl, they're probably not surprised. But let me see here. So this one, this was another sentimental pick. I wanted Brad and Kyle to get through. But obviously, Tim Foy and Kevin McCune, they turned it on. 260, 250, 240. 3 out of their first 4 games, and whatever happened in this last game, that 214. Moving on, here's another sentimental pick. I had Barnes. I had the Barnes team winning, but this was kind of more sentimental. But because Jesper and Kyle, that's that. Outside of EJ and Kent, just because it's EJ, those are the 2 strong teams going in, or at least on paper the strongest. And then here we come over here to Santu and Ethan. And it looks like they kind of handled them, pretty handily without too much trouble. But anyways, let's go into what my predictions were. So let me kind of change this around. So here, this one, I got this one again, kind of an easy pick here. The lefty duo, again, kind of an easy pick. And then here, I've been kind of rooting for these guys, from the beginning. So, I thought that both of them were throwing it pretty well, and we'll see. We'll see how they do. This one, I lost this one. I was really hoping, I thought that both of these guys are throwing it pretty well, but they lost and they are going home. So that's up to the brothers here. Get this typed in here. Yeah. So 28 and 29 going up against each other. So over here we've got, let me see here. So yeah, so this was, how come I just forgot? I just watched it. Just looked at it here. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I did pick this one right. I forgot that I had this one correctly, but I figured out what I was doing wrong here. All right. So yeah, so I picked this one right here. This one right here, I picked wrong. Yeah, yeah, that's where it was. That's where I'm kind of getting myself a little mixed up. This one I picked wrong, so this is that there. So here we go, and we've got yes. So I think how did I call this one? Yeah, so this was against Petron Horton against Zach, and yeah, they've got me all mixed up here. So anyway, so yeah, I called this one right. I'm not a pro at this, so you're gonna have to be patient with me. So this one here, this is Foy McCune against, yeah, this is my sentimental one that I lost. They're so much for being any, wanting a good story. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, the other guys are good stories also. Whatever. So here we go. So this is our new bracket here. So let's go through and see if I can be better than 50% here, because there's only yeah, so there's four. Yep. That's what we got. We got 8 teams left here. So all right, here we go. We go with the predictions and see how well I can do here. I don't know. I think the right's playing easier than the left. I could be way off, but I think the right's playing way easier than the left. And if they're on the fresh, I think that just gives it to the right, just because of topography, or lane surface more, So because I think a capability, I think they're both pretty close. Because Eddie and Dio are legit, and of course we know EJ and Marshall. So, but I'm going to go with experience on this one. And here we come over to so you got Nate and Julian, up against the brothers here. I'm going to go with Nate and Julian just because that's what I've been doing anyway. So, hopefully they'll win. I'd like to see them on the show. So here we go with so we got Santu and Jesper. Yeah, this has got to be an experienced one. You know, got lefty righty against righty righty. I think Jesper's going to be fine with the fresh. You know, he likes throwing that red ball, so I'm just gonna, Kyle's too good to not just peel one off here. So I'm gonna go with that. We'll see. So here, you got Zach again. Zach and is that AJ Chapman, I believe it is. Against Tim Foy and Kevin McCune. So that's righty, 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 righty. So a pair of righties up against each other. It just seems like these guys are bowling really, really well. I just, kind of looking through the scores. Where are these guys at? I mean, just a ton of big scores here. You got 6 games and the lowest one's 226. You got 5 games, the lowest one's 199. That's probably more of a setup game. They were probably out of it by 7th or 8th frame or 9th frame, probably 7th or 8th frame, judging by 199. So they probably just, kind of, picked out a couple of balls to get them straightened out. Yeah, I think these guys are really strong. So there we go. Those are my predictions. So we'll see. So these are, so if these 4 win, these are the 4 that make it to the show. If this is how it lines up where EJ and Marshall win, it's going to be it'll be Svensson and Kyle, Svensson and Troop. That'll be, if they lose and EJ wins, they'll be on the show. As far as that's how I understand it. I thought I read it somewhere that the high seed out of the round of 8 is the high seed. The loser out of the high seed out of round of 8 is going to be the 5th place team on the show, if I read all that correctly. But anyways, we'll see. We'll see how I'm doing here, at the end, and we'll just kind of take it from there. All right, guys. Well, you like my Vandy hat? Yeah, we'll we'll follow them every once in a while. I think their season's pretty much over, but maybe next season. So we'll see. All right, I'll keep striking.